Muchísimas gracias a CABE, toda mi gente aquí. It's a real honor. It's a real honor to receive this award. When I came back, my family came back to the States from Panama when I was 12 years old. I remember one of the experiences that happened was that my brother and I, without even being given a single test, because we were coming from a Latin American country, because we were black, they assumed that we should be in the remedial classes. And it was only because of my mother's iron fist and because of the educators, the teachers who actually believed in us and gave us the chance that we were able to go from remedial classes to the normal classes, from the regular track to the advanced accelerated track, and then ultimately to skip grades and to graduate the top of our classes. And so I'm very grateful to be here in the company of family and folks who believe that we need to really think very hard about what we're doing with public school education and make a difference in the way that CABE is. So thank you very much. This is a real honor and a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to spending some more time in just a little while with you all. Thank you. Thank you.
This presentation is a two-part presentation. So we thank so much Brian for being here. And I've just awarded him or presented the award, but now I'm asking him to stay on stage because he's also our keynote speaker. So I get to introduce him twice. So that is an honor. A double whammy for me. I love it. Thank you. It is an honor and pleasure to turn the program over to our CABE Board awardee, brand new awardee, Brian Bain, for the opening keynote address. His discussions and debates have aired weekly in 28 million homes worldwide on BET's award-winning talk show, My 2 Cents. His interviews have included guests including Jim Jones, LL Cool J, and Snoop Dogg, to name a few. He was wrongfully imprisoned during his second year at Harvard Law School. He sued the NYPD, was interviewed by Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes, and wrote the Village Voice cover story, Walking While Black, which drew the largest response in the history of the nation's most widely read progressive newspaper. His newest book, The Ugly Side of Beautiful, Rethinking Race in Prisons in America, was published in 2012. Brian brings a necessary and courageous voice to the discussion of race, language, politics, and societal behavior. Please join me again in welcoming the multi-talented poet, actor, prison activist, author, educator, and CABE Board Award winner, Brian Bain.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Can we start off with some poetry? Okay. A story goes, beauty and ugliness were walking along the shore one day. Ugliness says to beauty, let's go take a swim. Beauty agrees. So the two disrobe and dive in the water. As beauty swims around under the waves, ugliness returns to shore without saying a word and slips away in beauty's fine garments. When finally beauty comes up for air and realizes she's all by her damn self, being ashamed of her nakedness, she puts on the tattered rags that ugliness left behind. And to this day, there are still those who see the one and mistake her for the other. Things are often not what they seem. The world is so upside down. I dialed 999. I said, operator, put the devil on the line. Too many people on this planet are poor and dying. I play a hating, I'm just giving Satan peace of my mind. The devil had me on hold 400 years, but my eye was on the prize. I kept the phone in my ear. When he clicked over, he said, can I call you back, my man? I'm on the other line with my Uncle Sam. Sam needed a hand with the business plan and was mad that one went bad in Afghanistan. So I said, yo, just call me back in a couple of years. Wanted to tell him go to hell, but he was already there. Most people miss the devil when he walks right by. They be looking for his tail and two horns in the sky. The devil doesn't look demonic, he don't act deranged. He drives a red-eye rock and rocks a money exchange. I met him on a sunny summer afternoon. I was hanging at my house about to barbecue, and brothers was getting mad because all I had was tofu. Sorry when Lou came through and grabbed a couple of brews. The devil got drunk about 2:30. I seen him slip some bacon in the vegetarian stew. Stole some old lady's dentures so that she couldn't chew. And he kicked down a little kid wearing corrective shoes. But what I really can't stand didn't go down there. I don't care that he be tripping after too many beers. What I hate is all the suffering that seems to surround me, because he got cash ruling everything around me. Got my mom at 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Got my brother stabbed up in the street last week. Got my older cousin overdosing on cocaine. Had my homie take a bullet to the back of the brain. So I wasn't about to stop when my phone call failed. I got out my PC to send the devil email. I copied his address off an old CD-ROM. It's wickedmotherangry@god.com. I wrote, devil, I'm erecting this letter to you, because it's time your wicked ways around the world was through. But before I got another word out on the keys, I heard beep, 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 beep. Now, who the hell is this paging me? Took my celly off my hip so I could see what it said. Lucifer left you a message is all that it read. So I flipped open my phone so that I could retrieve the voicemail Mephistopheles had left for me. He said, sorry that I haven't gotten back to you. That's not the only thing I've not been able to do. I've been chilling like a villain on vacation with my crew on a beach in a black hole far from you. I looked up at the letter I had just completed, double-clicked on an icon so it was deleted. The devil hadn't been to earth in 6 centuries. The world is how it is because that's how people want it to be. Got my mom at 3 jobs just to make ends meet, because the government don't give a damn if poor folks eat. Got my brother stabbed up in the street last week, because another brother needed Nikes on his feet. Got my older cousin overdosing on cocaine. Since COINTELPRO, the ghetto ain't the same. Had my homie take a bullet to the back of the brain. NYPD wanted somebody to blame. We are living in a material world, living and dying in a material world, living, working, dying in a material world, like spiritually anorexic boys and girls. Thank you so much. I want to thank a couple of folks really quickly. Francisca Sanchez, of course, for constantly being a supporter of poetry and the arts, being a part of every educational conversation. I want to give her a big round of applause. Jan, Estella from Martin Luther King Middle School in Hayward. You know, yes, so much love and support. Mona Webb, Tove, all these folks. Marie Louise is here somewhere as well. There we go. I want to say thank you, because it really is, it does take a village, not just to raise a child, but it takes a village to actually support the kind of values that we want to see in the world. And these are some of the folks who have done that for me, and I'm very grateful. There's an old barbershop philosophy that says the second mouse gets the cheese. And when my barber first said this to me, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? He said, yeah, you know, we always talk about the early bird gets the worm, but we have to remember that the second mouse gets the cheese. And if you think about what that means, what he was saying that the first mouse comes along, and what happens? His neck gets all caught up in the trap, right? Right? Trying to get the cheese. He doesn't get it. She doesn't get it. The second mouse comes along and sees that mouse and says, sucks to be you. Goes down, gets the cheese, and goes on about their business. So all of us here today, all of us are here because somebody else put their neck on the line for us to have the opportunity to be here today. And so I want to give thanks for all of those folks friends, family, community, elders, and ancestors who made it possible for us to have this very important gathering. So I want to talk a little bit about the ugly side of beautiful. That piece is originally from the Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran, who wrote an amazing book called The Prophet, which was an inspiration for my first book. Yes, give it up for Khalil Gibran. Your children are not your children, they are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. So that inspired me to think about where we live, this country, in a different way. When I heard Ray Charles singing America the Beautiful for the first time, you know, with that raspy voice of his, and I thought about the power and the beauty of his voice, and also the ugliness of the reality that here is the son of enslaved Africans singing about the beauty of a country that took his people captive in this country. And the ugly side of beautiful, for me, still means we have to look at not just the things that are wonderful. We have to look at the things that are wonderful about this country. We have to look at the things that are also difficult to talk about, the things that make us uncomfortable to talk about. Because sometimes the things that make us most uncomfortable to talk about are the things we need to talk about the most. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of those things, if you'll bear with me for a little bit today. One of the things that I've realized working not only in schools, but working in prisons. I started doing work in prisons about 20 years ago. About 10 years ago, I started working at a prison in New York City called Rikers Island. It's the largest prison colony in the world. 14,000 people are incarcerated. 4,000 to 5,000 teenagers from 16 to 19 years old are incarcerated at Rikers every year. And to have to go to school, to be in high school, a lot of high school students don't want to be in high school. Nobody wants to be in prison, so if you're in high school and in prison, you doubly don't want to be there, right? So, but I learned a lot from those experiences. I also last year had an opportunity to start teaching at Harvard University and to teach hip hop and spoken word and theater at Harvard. So I've had a chance to teach at the oldest university in the country and at the largest prison colony in the country. And I've seen brilliant minds in both spaces. And it's helped me to realize that part of this conversation about what's happening with education in this country, with public school education in particular, that's often missed is that we are talking about power. We're talking about power. We talk about what language should be used in certain spaces, which languages should be supported by taxpayers' dollars. We're talking about power. Who has the power, the ability to actually move forward their own view of the world, their own understanding of the world in the classroom space, all right? Well, that means what? To be able to who should be able to put their vision of the world forward, right? When we talk about the N-word, when we talk about ebonics, we're talking about power. So we cannot have a conversation about what's happening with our schools unless we acknowledge that. We also have to think about power in the context of prisons, because as I'll talk a little bit more, during this time, there is a very real thing called the public school to prison pipeline. And if we do not do our jobs to the best of our ability, if we do not actually turn this whole thing around, what happens is we're going to continue to see more and more of our young, especially black and brown youth, be in the correctional facilities. And it's not a place that any of us want to be. So that's a part of the conversation. I think we need to, I also acknowledge that the public school system, which we're criticizing in many places for failing, is not failing. It's actually doing exactly what it was designed to do, all right? It's doing what it was designed to do. It was designed to maintain inequity in our society, all right? So it was not designed to bring out excellence, to bring out mastery, to bring out the very best of our young people. It was designed to actually maintain a certain amount of inequity in the society. And if we look at it from that point of view, it's doing its job. Prisons are doing their job. They're maintaining inequity in society. So if we are going to actually be effective at turning it around, we have to start from the point of it's not failing, it's doing what it was designed to do and has been stuck in that mode for over 100 years. And it takes a different approach, a more revolutionary approach for us to look at the work that we have to do. And so that's the starting point that I want to go at from today. In 1903, the scholar and activist, one of the founders of the NAACP, W.E.B. Du Bois, talked about the color line. He said the problem of the 20th century will be the color line. All right? He said one never feels his two-ness, an American and Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two warring ideals, two unreconciled strivings in one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. We call that the dual consciousness or the double consciousness. My man Dave Chappelle says it a different way. In 2003, Dave Chappelle said, well, you know, all black people are bilingual. You have to be bilingual, right? You have to understand the white man's world and his language, and you have to understand how to talk in your neighborhood, on your block, right? And so that understanding, right, that understanding of not just bilingualism, but biculturalism is something that is very resonant. Whatever language we speak in our household, you go out into the world and there's a whole nother language that's validated, that's supported, that's acknowledged, that's recognized. And so that's part of the divide, that duality that we're talking about. I had an experience that really changed my life when I was in my second year of law school, that around this idea of the duality. I was in my second year of law school, and I was coming out of a nightclub called the Latin Quarter, a club in New York City, coming out with my brother and my cousin. It's the kind of place that plays like a lot of reggae and salsa, merengue, Juan Luis Guerra, 440, and all of that good stuff. You know, a good mix of all the music we love to dance to. And we were coming out, and the police were looking for somebody because they got a call that shots were fired. We had done nothing wrong. We were just coming out of the nightclub. It was myself, my brother, my Puerto Rican cousin Red, who has like little red freckles and red hair. He looks like a Puerto Rican Opie Cunningham. And we were the only people of color that they saw. So the cops came to us and they said, where you boys going? I look at them and I was in my second year of law school, so I told my brother and my cousin, I said, guys, I got this, don't worry. I'm gonna handle the situation, all right? And so I go to the cops, who were these big 6'5", 300-pound bouncers. Before the cops came, the bouncers were there. And I said to the bouncers, I said, listen, you guys are beyond your jurisdiction. All right, we're on a public sidewalk. I just learned about jurisdiction and civil procedure. You're beyond your jurisdiction. You need to leave us alone. We're just going home. We're going on the 2 train to go back to Brooklyn. The bouncers were just stuck on stupid. They're like, who are these little guys who were talking back to us, you know? But I knew my rights. I knew we were in the right. We'd done nothing wrong. So we kept walking to the subway. My brother and my cousin looking at me like, oh, yo, my brother's mad legal, son. Yo, you can't stop us. So we go to the subway. We get on the subway. And when we get on the subway, the cops start to come down the subway after us. And it was like that scene in the second Matrix movie where the agents keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And the NYPD kept coming until we were surrounded by police officers, and the bouncers came in last, and they said, yeah, officer, they did it. And they said that we were the ones that had fired the shots. We had no guns. I didn't have any gun. Nobody had a gun. We hadn't shot anyone. But they pointed us out because they felt disrespected just because we knew our rights and we vocalized our rights. They ended up locking us up. They threw us up against the wall, went through our pockets. You know, they saw my laptop computer. They said, oh, this is an expensive computer. Where'd you steal this from? I said, I'm a law student. They said, oh, really? Where you go to law school? I didn't want to get into it, so I said, I go to law school in Boston. They said, oh, really? You know, where in Boston? I said, I go to Harvard. They said, oh, that's an expensive school. You know, my kids can't afford to go there. Are you on a ball scholarship or something? I was like, I'm 5'9", dude. And there's no ball scholarships for law school. What are you talking about, you know? So, but they continued to taunt us and give us a hard time. They locked us up. We got out the next day, but for 5 months we had to go to court to defend ourselves for a crime that we didn't commit. I wrote about this in my poetry journal, because I'm a poet, and it was a way of processing everything. I wrote all the details. I remember Officer Ronald Conley, badge number 1727. I put it all down. The next week, my law professor, Lonnie Guinier, an amazing warrior lawyer, first black woman to be a tenured law professor at Harvard Law School, she actually gave us an assignment. She said, write about an experience of injustice. So I wrote about this experience, and in my journal, and when she gave that assignment, I would just cut, paste, send, right? Homework done. And so the next week, she said to me, I read your story. I didn't think she read any of this stuff. She said, I read your story. I really think you should actually go and publish this. I said, nobody wants to hear a story about another brother getting locked up. That nobody cares about that, right? She said, no, send it to this guy at the New York Times. So I sent it to the New York Times. The New York Times editor called me back and he said, oh, this is a little bit racy for us, but send it to the guy at the Village Voice. They sent it to the Village Voice. The Village Voice made it a cover story, and over 100,000 people wrote letters in response to the story. It set a record for responses in the most widely read progressive paper in the country. And then Mike Wallace called us from 60 Minutes, and Mike Wallace said, oh, I want to go and I want to interview you for this piece. So Mike Wallace came and we went down to where the incident happened, where the arrest took place. And you know, Mike Wallace was 82 at the time. And so he said, okay, this is the wall where you said they had you up against the wall. I said, yeah, they had us like that. He said, okay. And you said, how did they frisk you down when they frisked you? How did they frisk you down? I said, you know, they frisk you down all up in your stuff and everything, and you know. And he's like, okay, and you said they threw you against the wall. Show me how they threw you against the wall. And I was like, Mike, you're 82. I'm not going to throw you against the wall so you can bust your head and I go to jail and never get out, you know? It's not going to happen, Mike. So, well, 20 million people saw this interview on 60 Minutes, and you know, it was a great feeling that our story was getting out. But then I suddenly started to have cases of identity theft. We found out later that there were cops giving out my social security code because they were pissed that I got their name on TV. So I got pulled over for my taillight being out, and long story short, what happened was they threw me in jail again for 2 misdemeanors and a felony. They had me as Breon Bain, AKA Anwar Bostic. Somebody who I'd never met, who was 6'2" and light-skinned, clearly not me. But they threw me in jail again, and this time when I was locked up for several days, the public defender didn't believe anything I said. She came in with plastic gloves and a surgical mask on to interview me, my public defender, my lawyer, appointed to me. And she said, so explain this to me. You say you have a law degree? I said, yeah, I have a law degree. She said, okay, so where'd you go to college? I said, to Columbia University. Oh, okay. How'd you pay for that? I said, scholarships and loans, like most people. Oh, she said, okay. Where'd you live when you went there? It's like Shapiro Hall, 116th and Broadway. Do you know the campus, you know? She said, no, I just want to get the full story. She said, where'd you go to high school? I said, I went to, she said, when did you finish high school? I said, I was 15 my senior year. I skipped 2 grades before I graduated. It was back in 1991. She said, okay. And you said you have a graduate degree too? Yeah, I said, after Columbia, I went to NYU. I got a master's at NYU. She said, well, how'd you pay for all these degrees you pursued? I said, I got my master's on a full ride. I said, my mom insisted I had to, you know. But it's nothing new. That's what immigrant kids get guilt trips to do, right? She said, well, you know, why didn't you respond to these charges before today? I said, miss, I never knew about them. I was out of the country. I was away. And that was all she wrote. Literally, she put her pen down and she says to me, it's my professional obligation to inform you, you may have a bipolar disorder. She said, you don't teach at NYU. You didn't graduate from Columbia or Harvard. She said, frankly, I'm not sure anything you've told me is true. She said, but it's nothing bad. Sometimes people create alternate realities for themselves as a coping mechanism for dealing with stress. You're just under a lot of stress. So I thought to myself, is she calling me crazy? The attorney sent to save me doesn't even believe I'm me. They put me on a prison boat off of Hunts Point in the Bronx called the VCBC. It's a boat off of this little bay area in the Bronx. The VCBC stands for the Vernon C. Bain Correctional Center. My name is Breon Bain. So they put me on a prison boat, a slave ship, named after the white people who owned my ancestors. What better way to say, boy, know your place? When I finally get to court days later, I'm in front of the judge, and the district attorney says to the judge, Your Honor, I have to recuse myself from this case. I know the defendant. I can't be here for this. And I looked at him, and he was a white guy about my height, brown hair, vaguely familiar. I couldn't tell you his name. And the judge says, well, who is this guy? Because is he Breon Bain? Is he Anwar Bostic? I have 2 identities, 2 social security codes. Is he, he's 5'9", 6'2". I don't know. What is he, And the assistant district attorney, the prosecutor, on the other side says, Your Honor, I know he's Breon Bain because he was in my law school class at Harvard. And I kind of made a noise like that, right? I was like, woo, going home, And I went home 3 days after that arrest, but then I went home and I had this horrible feeling, right? The ugly side of the beautiful experience, because I thought to myself, had I been anybody in my family, my brothers, my cousins, my uncles, my aunties, anybody in my family, my cousin Red, my brother Kay, then my black ass would still be locked up. I would still be behind bars. It was only because I had somebody from the oldest, most elite law school in the country who was in my class to vouch for me that I got out of jail. And so it really forced me to think a lot about what I was going to do with my education once I graduated from law school. And so I followed the model of Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire, who, yes, the Brazilian educator, who actually, many people don't know, went to